Hi there, Colleen Adrian here. Just talking to parents today who might struggle with setting limits. Maybe you have a sensitive, spirited child and you find yourself making long explanations when you're trying to set a limit and it still doesn't go well, and you're wondering if you're over explaining, you're wondering if you're being wishy-washy. Um, so I want to talk specifically today about that tendency to explain, and especially if the explanation gets a little bit long. Um, so explaining to your child can be really helpful when you're setting limits, but how you do it, the why or the reason that you're doing it, and how long your explanation is, all of those things matter, right? And here's why. So parents tend to explain to their kids when they're setting limits for many different reasons. And often they're not consciously aware of the reason that they might be explaining or their underlying intention. Or there might be more than one intention. So you might genuinely want to explain to your child, which is a reasonable thing to do. And often there's a little part of, them, or I'll say us, because I've done this too, that's hoping for something and you don't really realize it. So maybe you're hoping, for one example, that if your child understands that they'll be willing to accept the limit a little bit more easily, or if they understand, right? And often that doesn't work. But again, as I said, often these intentions or reasons that we have are subconscious. So I'm just going to list three reasons that parents tend to want to explain to their child that sometimes turn into kind of longish explanations, and you still don't get the outcome that you're hoping for. So the first one is you might be trying to explain because you're hoping that there's not going to be any conflict, or that you're hoping that there's going to be a lot less conflict, right? Or maybe you don't want your child to be upset. It's hard for you to see your child upset. And so there's a little part of you, even if you're not consciously aware of it, that's thinking, if I just explain this, and that they understand, maybe they're not going to be as upset, right? Doesn't typically work. Um, a closely related reason that parents sometimes explain, and it turns into a long explanation, is that you're actually kind of in some way looking a bit for their approval, right? So that they're kind of going to go, okay, right? And again, that they won't be upset. So I think that's a really big one. And the other reason that I want to mention in this video today is that sometimes we are, as parents, trying to actually feel heard and understood, because that helps us to feel better. So let me explain. Yeah, so feeling heard or feeling understood means that, just for those of you who that might not be a familiar term, means that you are hoping that you're going to get a response that helps your child to understand you and what you need. So maybe you need some peacefulness in the house, right? So you're trying to stop your kids from fighting, or maybe you need a tidy kitchen. And so you're trying to get them to help, that's not really setting a limit. You're trying to get them to help to take the garbage out, I was going to say. But, maybe you feel like you need some peacefulness for your own sanity. So you're trying to set a limit about, how much screen time they have, or what kind of behavior they're engaging in, something like that. So when you're feeling like you need to be heard and understood so that they kind of get what your need is, that's also not usually very successful. And typically, trying to get your own need to be heard and understood, like maybe how frustrated you are or how much you need peace and quiet sometimes, trying to get those needs met on a deeper level is better done with another adult, or, of course, a therapist, but maybe your co-partner, maybe a good friend, all of those places, right? So often this tendency to try to feel heard and understood by our kids um, is part of our wanting to feel some reassurance that we're actually being a good parent as well, right? Or we're hoping to for some reassurance that we're not emotionally wounding our kids. So we have a tendency to not want them to be upset when we're setting a limit. So that's kind of a long explanation, but I hope that covers kind of some of the nuances. If this is you and if you're struggling with this. So the reality is, let's just switch gears here and go on to what actually happens and what you can do differently. The reality is your kids will probably be upset when you set a limit because it's hard to not get what you want, right? And it brings up emotions. That's totally normal. And that's normal. I mean, that happens with adults, right? We don't get what we want sometimes. We might be disappointed. We might be, um, sad. We might be angry, depending on what the circumstances are. So it is normal to have some emotions when we don't get what we want, right? Our job as parents is to start getting comfortable with our kids' emotions and to not feel guilty as if we've done something wrong or as if we've emotionally wounded them because we haven't. As long as we're setting limits with, a kind but firm voice, and we're being kind of consistent about that. Um, we're not emotionally wounding them. And if they're crying or they're mad or upset, that's their normal response. And what we can do as parents is do our best to stay emotionally regulated ourselves and hold steady for them and comfort them, right? Or acknowledge their feelings, right? It's hard to not get what you want. So, just to start wrapping up here, you're setting a limit. You want to do so with kindness and firmness, and it's okay to give your child a short explanation. We're not, there's no candy before dinner. We're having a healthy snack, or we're having dinner in 10 minutes, and then, whatever your rule is or whatever you want. You can have one piece of candy after dinner, right? If that's what you've decided you're going to allow. Um, you can even add in a little value, like what you value as a family. We value good nutrition, and it's my job to look after that. So there's your short explanation. Um, then move on to empathy or enforcing the limit if needed, and that might be saying something like, I know it's really hard when you don't get what you want, right? I, I feel for you. It's really upsetting, right? And you can offer comfort. Do you want a hug? Do you want to come sit on my knee? If it's a little one, maybe they're mad and you can acknowledge that. It's okay to be mad when you don't get what you want, and I can't let you hit the dog or, whatever they might be doing to express their anger, right? This is what we do when we're angry. So setting a limit, being clear, and then offering empathy. Um, and if that's a little bit hard, sometimes it's tempting to feel like our kids are kind of, they're being unreasonable or they're trying to kind of pull one over on us. If that's a little bit hard, sometimes it helps to just remember back to when you recently haven't gotten something that you really wanted, right? And you're remembering your disappointment, right? It just can really help us to feel our empathy for our kids when they're struggling, right? Questions you can ask yourself to get clarity. If you're trying to shorten things and you're having a hard time, what is my purpose in explaining to my child? Now that I'm clear on my purpose, what information and what tone of voice do I need to use to explain? And what do I need, right? If I have some emotional needs, can I get those needs met with another adult or a therapist? So just to summarize here, a brief explanation is okay. It can really help set the foundation for family rules and family values so your child knows what to expect. But lengthy explanations, especially if you check in with yourself and you're finding you're doing it because you're hoping your child will understand, is usually because of our own emotional discomfort or unmet need in ourselves. And it usually doesn't calm your child, and it usually doesn't help things, ease off any more quickly or more easily. Your child needs you to be as regulated as possible so that you can be capable of supporting them to come back into a regulated state themselves. So, anything you can do to regulate yourself, meet your own emotional needs so that you can hold steady for them will be most supportive for them. Thanks for listening. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, pop them in down below. Thank you.